Saucy Not Bossy.
Welcome in, everybody. So, today we have a thought leader in the mental health space. She has been a therapist for over 18 years. I'm so excited to talk to her. She's worked in hospitals, schools, foster care system, and is now running her private practice, Ven Therapy Group. She's also a mother, she's a wife, she's a professional, she does all the things, and she's an advocate for youth. So, if you are a working mom, a stay at home mom, a partner, a wife, any of the things, this is a good conversation for you. So if everyone, please welcome in Manoshi Vin.
That's great. That's a beautiful introduction. Thank you. Hi everyone. I'm so excited to be here. And I'm so excited to talk about the one thing that I'm truly passionate about, which is mental health. So thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on, because this is a topic that so many people
Mhm.
of all age groups are coming to me, just things I'm looking at, Minoshi, on the internet, and it's just painful, and it just seems like it creeps up more and more. And so yeah, I have a few questions, and I want to really make that a topic today on all levels, if that works for you. Okay, so what would you say are the most common mental health challenges that we face today that are different from, let's say, 10 years ago?
Sure. So we today, from 10 years ago, post COVID, we live in a much faster world. We, there is, I mean, social media took a huge boom during COVID. I think we have a much higher pressure to be perfect. That is something that I hear a lot from parents, from kids, from families. This idea that we have to do everything all the time and do it really well. And then I think that also brings us to this concept of people feel lonely because they're isolated, because they feel this constant anxiety, pressure, which causes depression. So, all of those combined, I think the pressure has gotten up, the loneliness has come up. And I think people just in general, parents especially, mothers especially, feel extremely isolated.
How come nobody really talks about it, or am I just alone in that?
I think, and this is it's really interesting, right? I think we as society, as women, are often told to be together. We're often judged. I mean, most women will tell you we all feel judged, whether you're a working mom, whether you're a stay-at-home mom, whether you're doing both. There's constant mom guilt and there's constant judgment. And so I think maybe that contributes to, and I would think that would contribute to, like, people not openly saying, this is exhausting. Like, this is not what I signed up for. I also know that women who struggle with fertility, women who have had difficult pregnancy feel a sense of shame of saying, this is really hard. And it is really hard. I always joke, I've been a therapist far longer than I've been a mom. And man, being a therapist to other people's children, so much easier. So much easier. Being a mom to my two girls, so much harder. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. So what got you into being a therapist? What was that path for you?
sure. So I think for me, I think I was what you call a highly sensitive child. I think as a child, I often questioned things, felt things much deeper than my friends did, and I think I kind of wondered why and how. And I think as I kind of aged and as I grew, I think a lot of it was fascinated by other people's mental health, my own mental health. And I think that just kind of, one, it made me much more empathic, but two, I think it pushed me to being in this space where I get to see people. I get to see the best of people at their worst times, and I get to see them grow from there. And that to me is incredibly rewarding.
Yeah. I love that. Um, okay, so what would you say though if you're feeling isolated as a mom
Mhm.
and really don't have, because I make jokes, Minoshi, like just because I bred at the same time as other women in my daughter and son's class
Mhm.
doesn't mean I have to be friends with them. We're just very different. And I see a lot of forced relationships because women
Yeah.
well, I need a mom friend.
Mhm.
But sometimes I feel like can be more isolating when you're
Sure.
trying right? So how do you balance that? Help me. How do you balance
How do you balance being a mom and being an individual?
and not feeling isolated and wanting to do things
Sure.
and, just all of it. Yeah, it's
So I think one, and I'm going to introduce this concept of matrixence. I think that's something that you have explored,
yeah,
in just in general. And I think there is something that changes for us as we become mothers. I think there's something biologically, a lot of things change for us. I think the first step to addressing that isolation is recognizing that we're changing and we continue to change through this process of motherhood. As our children change, as our biology changes, I think it's a tricky balance to retain who you were, to grieve who
mm,
you were, and then to all of a sudden recognize that there is a new you coming down the pipeline, and to just kind of call it what it is, which is, moms can be lonely. Moms are often lonely, especially moms of young children who are with their children all the time, often report the most loneliness. I think as kids get older, moms have more of an opportunity to regain some of that what they were prior
right.
to birthing.
Right. And then there's guilt with that because it's like I tried
Mhm.
so hard to have my twins and then I'm with them all the time and I'm trying to work. I prayed for these children. How dare you, Shauna? How dare you complain that you're tired? It's like, but I am. So going back to the matrixence, for people that don't know, what is
What
that?
that is. Yeah.
What is that concept and the emotional and identity shifts that come along with that?
Ultrasense is literally the process of becoming a mother. It's kind of like adolescence. I think most people can recognize adolescence as an actual phase where we're leaving childhood behind and then we're moving towards adulthood. And we're kind of in between two different kind of spaces. Matrixense is essentially that. You're leaving your non-motherhood days and you're moving towards motherhood. But a lot of changes happen. Biologically, socially, financially, in every sense, you have changed. Oftentimes people will compare it to adolescence because it's kind of like, it's being midwater. Your things are changing. You haven't gotten where you want to get, but you've left behind who you were. So
Mm.
essentially, matrixence is the idea of becoming a mother and those changes that come with it.
How come I believe that nobody really taught me a lot of this before becoming a mother? Is it because
Yeah.
I pregnant and I'm like, "Oh, it's all gonna work out. It's gonna be okay." Or you see Instagram posts of like perfect moms that are like doing the do. Why? Why didn't I know more?
Because I don't think we talk about it. I really don't think, and again, there's a societal there was a research that was done by University of Washington St. Louis, and I think that they were kind of seeing, what is the one quality worldwide that mothers really attribute to being a good mother, and that's selflessness. That is prioritizing everyone else's needs before yours. Worldwide, there is this notion that mothers just don't complain. Mothers just kind of go with it and, do everything that needs to be done for everybody else. But but nobody talks about that process, that physical process. Physical process of birthing alone is so incredibly traumatizing. That process of, having a child, a baby, babies leave, their DNA inside of us. There's a lot kind of biologically and neurologically that changes for us as well. We just don't talk about it because we're supposed to be this group of individuals that can do everything and we're completely selfless. When in reality, I think that selflessness is causing enormous isolation and mental health issues.
Yeah, I agree. Now, the self-care notion,
Mhm.
because I I'm guilty of it. I have a mom suffering with Alzheimer's, and then I've got the kids, and everyone calls me the sandwich generation, and I like to say I'm the panini generation, right? Hard pressed. But everyone's like, "Well, you have to do self-care. It's not selfish." And I'm just like, I can never or I will never make time for it. Like I need to, like moments like this of talking with you and doing Saucy Not Bossy. That's why I do this as an outlet to just learn from wonderful women. But how would you tell a person like me, don't have guilt with it, to break down that stigma? How does one do that? when especially people around them are saying that's selfish?
Sure. So I think self-care. We have these very indulgent ideas of self-care. Self-care isn't going to the spa. Self-care is essential care. When you're a caregiver and you don't have any, if you're not caring for yourself, you're not going to have anything to give. And most of us do, right? Many actually I would say most parent moms like run on empty. We just keep going. So it's not really self-care. I think we need to rephrase it as essential care, and
Mm.
it doesn't have to be, I think one of the challenges that I often hear from mothers in sessions is, I don't have time. When do I do this? And I think it's maybe not so much, kind of these larger go to the spa for the day, I think it needs to be the smaller, nuanced things that you can do to sustain. So for me, I I have to have some time where I don't talk to anybody. I'm a therapist. I'm taking care of clients in my practice. I'm a wife. I have a husband. I have two children who talk all the time. And I want to be available to them, but there has to be periods where I have to separate. I also one of my self-care things that I do, and it's so small, but it really is so essential to me is when I leave work, I stop at Starbucks and I get a tea, and then I finish it on my way home because once I get home, I have homework, I have dinner, I have all the other mom things I have to get done. But there's something about that tea and finishing that tea that for my brain signifies, "All right, let's close this chapter. Let's start
Mhm.
this other chapter." And it
Mhm.
does. It kinda gives me a pause. So, self-care doesn't have to be big, but it has to be consistent and has to be essential to whatever works for you. Otherwise, I think when you run on empty for long periods, at some point, it you just kind of exhaust yourself.
That's really interesting, and I really wanna take from that because you have your setup for the next chapter, which is
Yeah.
going home to the kids, so when you finish the tea, maybe the tea is, like, 2 minutes longer that one day.
Right. No, I do. I plenty of times I sit in my garage and I look at my phone, or I look at my tea and I kind of gather myself because as soon as those doors open, there are two little people that need me. And I think that that probably speaks to most moms. People need us all the time. And we have to figure out a way to refuel that.
And then what do you do? Because this is part of why I started Saucy Not Bossy is I wanna tell my daughter she's a leader, she's not bossy, that, connotation, but I want to ask you, when my children don't stop talking to me and I do need a moment, right? And it's non
Yeah.
look at this like, what do
Yeah.
you what is it? Because I don't wanna say, "Please go away." Like, I never wanna
Sure.
have them, but I'm so, like, 20 tabs open. What do you suggest to parents out there that don't
Sure. Well, I think some of that work is done before you kinda enter the door, right? Like, you have to I think some of that work has to be done because, again, little people don't necessarily recognize that life is, giving you lemons today. They in their world, they're extremely I mean, kids are egocentric. We're all egocentric in that our world revolves around us, and so sometimes it is, I think for me, there has to be a barrier between what happens before I enter my garage and what happens once I enter the doors of my house. Do I sit there and smile and nod? No. I mean, there are days where I walk in and I'm frustrated. I'm human. I'm frustrated. And I do say, give me a minute. Just hold on a minute. I'm coming. But I think for me, that sitting in my garage for 2 extra minutes does help me kind of reframe my mind that all of a sudden I'm no longer a therapist, I'm a mom. And there are times where, after my kids go to bed, I snap back into being a therapist, especially if I have someone in crisis, because again, our work just never stops. But the stronger my boundaries between the 2 worlds I live in, the better I feel. But it doesn't I'm gonna be honest, it's progress over perfection, right? There I mean, trust me, I've plenty of times I'm like, "Read the room, kids," like, I am exhausted, but they can't. They're not able to, and they're not supposed to, right? Because 'Cause they're children.
Yeah. Yeah, I know, I'll be doing a million things, my daughter's just like, "Look at this," and I'm like, my head's down, but things are on my
Yeah.
head, I'm just like, Okay, give me a second." But
Yeah.
but with the whole perfectionist thing, and
Mhm.
I have this I just got weird things that I believe in life. And with the perfection, I don't believe in perfectionism.
Mhm.
I never have. I just feel like it's like when I was growing up with a bunch of celebrity kids, I never could be in that world because I had a job since I was 15. So I wasn't going to try to keep up literally with the Kardashians, right? So I learned perfectionism is all bullshit a long time ago. However, I do see a lot of women walking around trying to make sure everything's perfect. And
Right.
Minoshi, like, I look at Instagram, I look at
Mhm.
all of these women look perfect and they pose. And me, I'm like running around, my hair's like that. And if I can catch a photo of one kid looking to the side, I'm lucky, right?
Yeah, I mean, you're a mom, right? You're
So how do we break down and reduce perfectionism, stigma, and because I just feel like it causes burnout. Tell me if I'm wrong.
No, it does, and I think so so one thing I stress, and this is and something that, I think something that I probably also tell myself often, perfectionism does not equate to the perfect mother, does not equate to this idea, I think we all want to be great moms. I think we are here because we are good moms. But perfectionism does not equate to a perfect mom. I think in fact it stresses people out so much that they're not able to give what's required in parenthood. It's exhausting. Parenting is also a process. It's not it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. I mean, we are all it's I I'll g so back, kind of right postpartum with my first daughter, I remember I could not breastfeed, and I remember the amount of pressure I felt because breastfeeding was great, and it is great, it is really good for the baby. We had different challenges, and I remember feeling so much grief and sadness, and everybody could just perfectly produce milk. These were gonna be geniuses, and mine was gonna be left behind because she was formula fed. And I think as I sit here as a mother of a 10-year-old and I reflect back and I go, that was a small part of my life. It's a process, right? My 10-year-old's great. She's doing great things. She's amazing. And she was not breastfed. And not that I'm advocating that people don't breastfeed, but what I'm saying is that pressure, if you're unable to do something, it's okay. Because having a fulfilled, happy mother, a mother who got her sleep and wasn't, sitting there pumping, every other hour, which I know so many women do to ensure their child doesn't get, formula fed, it led me to being a calmer, happier postpartum mom. I think it's wonderful to try our best, but Instagram is not reality. It's a snapshot of someone's life, right? So how fair is it to compare your busy functioning life to that snapshot? It doesn't do it justice.
No bullshit.
Snapshot, right? And at the end of the day, it's what you show the world, and not many people sit there and say, "I am having a really crappy day."
No.
I'm having, just this is not working, or my life is not where I want it to be. When people consistently tell me their life is great, I just kind of nod because none of our lives are great. We're humans. We go through things.
Yeah, that should be the interesting part with what you do. It's probably like, "Oh, it is. Let's unpack."
I think our default answer to most things is, "How are you?" "Great."
Great.
"Great." And
I'm
it's great as a default answer to a lot of things.
I
Does
agree.
not necessarily mean we're great.
People stop asking me things at the grocery store, Minoshi, now because they'll be like, "How are you?" And I'll be like, "Do you wanna know? I'm not gonna trauma dump. This is what's happening at this moment." They're like, "Okay." I'm like, "You asked. You asked." But going back to perfectionism, breastfeeding, and then what's
Mhm.
another type of, because I am not in that perfectionism world, so I'm always fascinated by it. What's another piece of people trying to be perfect with parenting?
Why do we have desire to
Yeah,
be
when I was growing up, just the fact that I feel like us now as women, if the women that are asking, "Can I do better? Am I a good mom?" You're probably a good mom. Like,
Right, right. No, that is true. That's right. The fact that you're reflecting on if you are, makes that reflection alone as telling me that you are really aware of what's going on here and what's going on up there.
Right. So if you do that, then where does perfectionism come in? Is it just you got to get to school on time? Like,
It's more of, again, that societal pressure of we just somehow make things happen. When you clash that with, oh my God, the effort that it takes to make things happen, there's almost like a cognitive dissonance there, right? There's this piece, I have this ideal version of myself, and here's my real version, and how, where do they fall, and how much stress does that cause me? I think having realistic expectations, if you're a mom of twins caring for your, you know, aging mom, setting realistic expectations of where you are and what you can offer, and then to step back and say, no, I cannot offer that. I think is really what balances us out, kind of pulls away from that concept of I have to, or I cannot. But that ideal self, we all have it. I mean, we all have this ideal version of ourselves, and we all have a real version. And the farther they are in kind of thought, the more stress we feel. So maybe change that ideal self and bring it closer to where you are. Meet yourself where you are.
I love that. Yeah, because, as moms, we wear so many hats, whether it's
Mhm.
I used to before I was a mother, I was like, "Stay at home moms, what do they do all day?" Okay, shame on me, shame on me, and then, like
But
but then
again, how could you have known because you were watching that snapshot of their life? Like, there's no way any of us were living to be moms until we became moms.
yeah, my mom used to always not to shit on anybody, but my mom always used to say women that didn't have children were old babies in a sense because
Mhm.
they never had to take care on that level of not trying to put them down, but it's just a very different lifestyle, which I really respect. Women that say they don't wanna have kids, all day, good for you. You know yourself. But when you are a mother and you wear a million hats, and
Mhm.
women now, like us, are working, balancing this, having the guilt of not being around 24/7 sometimes, how do you not lose yourself? How do you I know the boundaries you were talking about, having the moments before, not feeling like you have
Mhm.
to be perfect, but how, like, day to day?
I just have like I'm looking at what I wrote down. How do we not lose ourselves? The first thought I have is recognizing that we're changing, recognizing that our lives are evolving, kind of embracing that. I also think for some of us that loss is big. I mean, I remember my days of happy hours, my days of daytime boozing. I mean, I grieve that. She was really fun because, she could come home and sleep all day. This woman can't do that. Anxiously sips like the tea sitting in my garage. But I think that idea of embracing who you are in that moment, setting realistic goals of, this is who I was, this is who I don't know who I'm going to be, frankly. I mean, but the ability to kind of build those boundaries. We as women, as mothers, sometimes need to say no, whether it is to our children, whether it is to people that that give us our paychecks, whether it is our partners, but that ability to also say no. I think that helps a lot. I think you were asking me earlier, in the many hats that you wear when you come home and your child is talking, talking, talking. I think it is okay to say, hold on, just give me a second. Go to the bathroom for like 30 minutes, whatever you have to do to take that break, right? But to be able to, you know, say no, to be able to, recognize that you do wear many hats, that there is the amount of grace without guilt that you have to give yourself because you need it. But I also, I struggle with this myself, but I always hear people saying, well, ask for help, ask people for help. And I know for a lot of women, a lot of mothers, that help may or may not exist. But in whatever capacity you can, it is okay to ask for help. It is okay to verbalize, hey, I am not okay. I need to step back. Again, I think it's such a hard thing because, there's those of us that have the privilege of getting help, and there are those of us that don't. So, but tapping into your resources the best you can to recognize you cannot do it all. You cannot expect to be a extremely high functioning producer at work or baking cookies from scratch, doing math homework while like tap dancing, whatever it is that women have to do, because we all have to do it. There are times where you will fall short because we can't do it. And to recognize that when you do fall short, to say, it's okay. And that's maybe an internal dialogue. It's okay that today I was late to school. People are late to school. You move on.
Hmm. Yeah. And then what would you say? A lot of women have issues not even asking people outside their tribe, but
Mhm.
their husband or their partner that
Sure.
I know, my husband he's an amazing father and he's a great role here. But I'm the mom, right? And I'm the mom. So I have to come to him a lot, but I've learned those skills to say hey and come to him in a
Mhm.
different way because again, I can't boss him around. He's not my kid. But sometimes
Mhm.
can't you see that, but he doesn't. How would you suggest to go to their partner and say that they need more?
Sure. I think that again, I think you say Breenie Brown. I always say call her Bryn Brown, but she's Breenie Brown. I've heard her say, when she talks about her family, I've heard her say, we prioritize things as a family. And that often works well because, yes, you are the mother, but in a family, there's more, there are other people involved, and it's okay to ask them to contribute. In fact, I think we should demand that everyone contributes, right? It's not just it's not just partners, but I mean, I recently, as my kids have gotten older, I've started asking them, not for help, but I think it was, cleaning up after dinner. They thoroughly enjoy wiping down the table, and it takes them 45 minutes to do it. But you know what? One, it gives them a sense of responsibility, but two, guess what? It's one moderate thing I don't have to worry about. So recognizing that yes, we are mothers, but in a family, it takes all people in the family to make it work. And I think there's also maybe a conversation needs to happen before the situation arises, right? I think as we talk to our partners to say, "Hey, I'm wearing a lot of hats. I'm burning out. And how can I ask you for help when I'm burning out that you will receive in a way that isn't, well, I am tired too, or well, that I mean, we have a code word. I mean, when I say feathers, that means I'm serious. Like this is not working, and you need to step in. Um, but and it sounds silly, but it works because again, I think when you're in that moment of burnout, you're so incredibly just I mean, you aren't exactly having very patient conversations. Everyone's feeding off of each other. So have this conversation before. Dinner time is exceptionally hard. Can you take this on? Or when I say feathers, can you say, all right, mom needs to go to the bathroom. Dad's going to step in.
I like that. Yeah, because I feel like with coming from perfection and then like the imperfection and the mess and the muck and the beauty of it all, right? How do we keep connecting to people through that?
I think kind of going back to what you were saying earlier is I I have learned that surrounding myself with women that I can have very honest conversations with, and they're not necessarily mothers, as long as they're able to receive those honest conversations is my backbone to being able to do what I do. Yeah, and again, it's those are gems of people that are hard to find, but I do think, whether it is somebody in your family, whether it is a friend, just to be able to say, this is not easy. And I think as society for us to normalize, I think that's the biggest thing is motherhood is not easy. And nobody sits there and says it out loud. Motherhood is exhausting. It takes, you're giving so much and you get stuff back in return too. But in that moment, you're giving a lot. Right. And so to be able to kind of say it out loud.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, the other day, I was doing dishes, the kids were gone, they weren't here, but I'm doing dishes, I'm doing a million things, and I was like, "I did not sign up for this, I am not Donna Reed."
That's your reality, right? The fact that you can say the fact that that is your reality and you don't like it, and that's okay.
Yeah.
There are aspects of motherhood that I don't like, and there are aspects of motherhood that I love. And
Mm.
I have these moments that I'm like, oh, like this is the greatest thing ever. But trying to get my kids up in the morning, dragging them by their foot is not fun. And it's exhausting. And it's exhausting for all of us. But that's the reality, right?
Yeah,
That we can't do it.
what's more exhausting is hanging out with people that pretend that's not the reality.
Right. No, absolutely. And I think anyone that tells you that I don't buy it.
They're medicated. I'm like, "You're over medic or you're not in reality."
I think when you have to question when people fundamentally tell you everything is great all the time. You've got to wonder why do they feel the need to say it, and what lurks behind their need to say it. Because I think it is okay to be imperfect, tired, exhausted, sometimes extremely frustrated, because that's what makes us mothers. That's what makes us human.
Yeah, I like being human. Oh my gosh, I love this conversation. So, let me ask you, this is just on the fly, some questions. So, if someone would wanna go about finding a therapist, you just seem amazing. There's just so many stigmas to therapists where you have to lie on the couch. I've been in therapy since I was 9 years.
Yeah, no, I would be really concerned if somebody was making you lie on the couch. That would be very concerning in a therapy room.
Okay, good. You heard it here, everybody. No lying on the couch. But how would one go about finding the right therapist for them?
So I think so here's the thing about therapy. You really want to find somebody that you trust, somebody that you have a connection with, because it does not work unless you do, right? It is very hard to open up your heart and soul to somebody that is not going to give you the feedback. It actually kind of backfires. There are larger databases like Psychology Today. I mean, almost all therapists list their practices there. People can go in, they can type in what kind of services you're looking for, what works for you, what doesn't, because there are so many different types of therapy as well. I always talk to clients before they step into my room about what is it that you're looking for, and let me tell you what I offer. And it is a process. If you don't like me, you're not going to offend me. I want you to find somebody that you really enjoy, because therapy, when you find a good therapist, it's a lifelong kind of process. Like, I still have clients that I've seen for the last, I've been in private practice for the last 10 years, but I practiced in a group practice before that. And I have clients that I saw in middle school that I see now as adults. Sporadic, because when somebody knows so much about your life, it is so helpful to have that relationship. So find the right person, and don't feel terrible if that's not the right person. If their feelings get hurt, then that is definitely not the right therapist for you. But find somebody that you can trust. Find somebody who works based on your strengths, and call it out if it's not working.
I
So
that. Yeah. No, I love that. And then so you get on the phone with you. It's dating. It literally is like dating. I'm like, why are you?
it's dating, right? And when
Yeah.
you find the right person, you don't let them go, right? Yeah.
Actually, you instinctively know. That's why when I got on the phone with you, I was like, oh, I love her voice, her energy. And I think I read on your website that you've had good experiences yourself with mentors. And, that's what it is in life. You just don't pick one and think it's going to suit you.
Yeah. I think you shop. I think you shop for a therapist, right? As much as I think the difference between being in therapy and seeing a doctor is, when you see your primary care or your OBGYN, it's for a limited amount of time, right? It's transactional. With therapy, as much as it is transactional, it is also, you don't want to see somebody where you walk away feeling worse than when you entered. There is this saying in the therapy world, we don't open things up that we can't close by the end of the session, because it is a, when you're talking about trauma, when you are talking about painful things, when you're talking, you don't want your therapist to be like, well, good mothers don't say that. That is horrific. I have had clients who've people have said that too. Shop for a therapist, find the right one, and keep looking till you find somebody. And when you find somebody, have open and honest conversations. If you don't like something that's being said, call it out. That's part of that process.
I love that. And then what would a person expect with if they were to Zoom you or go in? Like,
Mhm.
what is a for with someone that's never been to therapy? What's
Sure.
something you were expect in their first session?
Session or first phone call because they're a different.
Well, if they sign up, if you do have a phone call and then go into a session, some people I feel like that never been to therapy think that they just have to expose. I'm like, you only have an hour usually. How do I do all of this?
So I think one of the things I think it's very therapist dependent. And again, there are people who will walk in and say, "I've researched cognitive behavioral therapy and that's what I want." And they come in with a very specific idea. I am somebody I work from a strengths-based perspective. So I don't, as a therapist, don't prescribe to a modality. I really look to you to tell me what is it that you want. I've had clients who come in and said, "My last therapist was so sweet and it did not work for me. I need someone to call me out." And I do. I will call you out. And I have clients who have significant amount of anxiety who will say, just hear me out, just help me process, and that is what we do. So I think when you walk into a session, it really depends on what you want to get out of it. I always ask clients, what are your goals? Because therapy is warm and fuzzy at times, and you could keep going endlessly and not really get anything out of it, right? So what is it that you want to get out of therapy? What is it that and then I always ask, what's worked for you in the past? Even if you haven't been in therapy, like what works for you? Are you somebody that wants to be called out for kind of maladaptive behaviors? Do you want me to, not push you to process a certain trauma because it's going to linger with you after you leave here? And people have said, I don't want to talk. And I will say, tell me if you don't want to talk about this. Let me know. If you tell me, push me to talk about it, I will. I hold you accountable for it. So it's really dependent on the therapist, but a good therapist, and I put quotes because I don't know what a good, a therapist that works for you may not work for the next person. So find who works for you.
Well, you seem like a wonderful
Well,
therapist.
thank you. I feel like I
Listen,
can say that.
I love that. Even and I think you need to have partners like that. And I also think a therapist needs to be the voice because I had a shitty voice in my head growing up with my father.
Mhm.
And so I found a therapist besides my mom. I found a therapist that like became the new voice in my
Yeah.
head. You want to be able to have a person that listens and doesn't force things. So thank you for that. That's
Of
awesome.
course.
Nosh.
Well,
I
thank
appreciate
you.
yeah. Wait, I've got another question. This is on questions. This is just for fun and you can pass if not. But do you have a favorite movie or TV show that depicts therapy well?
Oh my god, I don't know.
Okay.
Oh,
Like,
I know. I'm, like, trying to think of how many therapist movies. I have a really dark sense of humor, so I probably would have really I think it's cathartic when you're a therapist and you have a dark sense of humor because I think in some ways it kinda helps you release. So I'm trying to think. I actually don't know. I have to think about this, and I will have to
we'll
somehow
put
get back to you on that.
we'll put it in the thread. Yeah, for sure. And then okay, my last question that I have for you because this has been so fun and I could keep you forever. But what similarities do you see in successful clients and
Mhm.
clients that just you can't help anymore, just don't want to respond to the help that you're trying to give?
Sure. I don't think that. So again, it's a process, right? I've had clients who are extremely resistant that, in between sessions, extremely just resistant for a variety of reasons, will sometimes have some sort of a breakthrough and all of a sudden therapy is working for them. So I don't think there is a marker that makes you successful in therapy as much as, if you are wanting help and you're wanting to present the most authentic version of yourself, um I think it will make you more successful in therapy, to again, and when I say authentic version is, if something's not working, calling it out. If something is working, being able to kind of take that with you. I really don't think it's about traits that make somebody successful. I think it's about the fit between two people that makes the process successful or unsuccessful. If you are not in a space to be in a therapy room, take a break. come back when you are ready. That's okay too. I mean, there are people that go through terrible things that don't want to talk about it, and that's okay. You just come back when you are ready to talk about it.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, it's not like you're gonna hold their hand and make them and say,
Yeah,
"Stay."
because it's not going to work.
Yeah. No, I love that. I love that you work for the person. It's not just about your
Yeah.
ego. I've had so many therapists. I'm like, "Well, am I listening to you or am I trying to get help for me for a second?" Yeah, because I help everybody else. But do you have you said you have friends, but do you have a therapist or a
I
mentor?
do. I
Oh,
do.
okay.
I mean, yes, because I'm human. Yes, absolutely. And I have a wonderful, I've had periods. I've gone consistently because I have things that I need to resolve, and there are periods where I just do a check in. And I became a therapist because part of my early years trying to figure out what was going on with me. So, absolutely. I mean, I think it would be silly to say like, no, I don't go to therapy. Absolutely, I need help. I mean, I'm human. I have children.
Yeah.
I have a job, I have a husband. There are things that come up.
No, that's wonderful. Because again, if you're not outsourcing your feelings to
Yeah.
somebody else, how can you just sit there and listen to everybody else?
There is a great book that came out actually, it was mid-COVID it came out. It's called Maybe You Should Talk to Somebody. I think that's what it's called. And
Okay.
it's a therapist who's navigating their own therapy while providing therapy, and she kinda documents it. It's a phenomenal kind of snapshot of both. And I think it's called Maybe You Should Talk to Somebody, and I remember it being a really amazing read.
Okay. Thank you for that. Yeah, and I love on your website that you've got books of the month. Where do people find you?
Yes, go to my website, which is my first name, ManoshiVin.com. It will give you more information on me. You are able to kind of book us if you want to have a phone call. Happy to talk. I'm always happy to talk. And then we kind of take it from there. I do provide virtual options for the states that I'm licensed in. Consultations, there is some flexibility in what kind of support I offer. So I'm always happy to talk, so give me a call.
I love that. And then okay, I've got one more I promise. With therapy, you can't be friends. If you start therapy with a therapist, you can't be friends until you're like, not in therapy with them for a lot of years. Is that true that I heard?
I I would I mean, I think it is very difficult. I mean, there's a huge conflict of interest. I've had clients for such a long period of time that I'm mindful of. I mean, I'm not friends with them. They know things. They saw me when I was pregnant, they saw me give birth. Um, but yes, I very much recommend you not be friends with your therapist. Friendships have a special space. I think therapy has a special space, and they're usually mutually exclusive. So yes, definitely. I don't see my friends in therapy boundaries with clients. You know, we have therapist protocols of when we see people in public places. So, and we most of us abide by it. So,
I love that. That's good for people to know that if you do see
mm,
if you
yeah,
if you're in therapy with your therapist, they're not just gonna be like, "Oh, that session was great." It's a very sacred space, and you
it's a
really
sacred space and it's a safe space. That's a large part of it. And I think friendship isn't exactly boundaried and sacred many times, and you want to keep them separate.
I love that. Manoshi Vin, this has been such a great conversation. I love your social media too. You're
Well,
really, really
thank
wonderful.
you. Well, thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk about things. And I love the fact that you are talking about things and normalizing it for so many of us, because that is needed.
Thank you. Yeah, and yeah, now I'm gonna go do the dishes.
You're gonna wear your mom hat and keep going. Yeah.
Then hi at 1:30 when I go pick up my children. Everything's perfect.
Yeah.
So I will say the one thing that I try to do, and my mom did, when I pick them up from school, I get off the phone. I try
Yeah.
to be present
Yeah.
as possible. So I try to do my little wins. If anybody that can have a little win, like you said, your
Yeah.
or the little bit taking from this conversation each day, if you can just have one little win, I think we're doing just great. I think we
I always say progress over perfection. You're progressing, man, you're a great mom. You're doing a great job. You're keeping humans alive and you're doing what needs to be done.
Yeah. Yeah, bless it. Well, thanks, Manoshi, and we'll talk soon. I
You too.
appreciate you.
All right.
You
Take
too.
care.
Bye.
Bye.